Welcome aboard our home and trawler, Sea Venture. Join us and the crew as we travel, explore, and experience all the world has to offer. We hope your time with us entertains, inspires you to live the life of your dreams. If we can do it, you can do it. So let's cast off the lines and head out for our next adventure.
Well, welcome to part 2 of our Bulbous Bow videos. If you have not seen part 1, I would highly recommend that you go watch it. It would help a lot since we covered a lot of information in part 1. In part 1, we covered what is a bulbous bow, why they're on most of the large ships around the world, a little bit of history about bulbous bows, research into bulbous bows on large ships, what that has to do with the bulbous bow on Sea Venture, hint almost nothing, research into bulbous bows on ocean-going trawlers like Sea Venture, what our specific goals were in adding a bulbous bow, and we went through days 1 through 5 of the build process. You can either try to find episode 1 on YouTube, good luck, or just jump over to our website, www.cruisingseaventure.com. Under the videos tab, there's Tech Talks, and Bulbous Bow is, you can click there, and it will take you right to where episode 1 is located. In this video, part 2, we're going to cover days 6 through 13 of the build. We're going to put Sea Venture back in the water. We're going to do our initial sea trials, including views of the bulb cam. That'll be fun. We'll do some testing in different sea conditions. We'll go through a detailed cost breakdown, and we'll wrap it up with some conclusions that Rosie and I have made about the addition of the bulbous bow on Sea Venture.
All right, we have a lot of building to do, so let's get to it. On day 6, they continued the fiberglassing process as before, and then started to install a center board in the middle of the bulbous bow. This is a 1-inch thick piece of fiberglass that's conformed to the angle of the bow inside and is fiberglassed all the way around. It adds vertical strength to the entire process and to the bulb. So just more lineal feet of fiberglassing work, then continuing to fiberglass on the outside. It seemed like a never-ending process, but they kept working away at it. Then day 7. Day 7 continued the fiberglassing process both inside and outside of the bulb. It was really fun to watch them do this process. Again, the heat lamps just put some heat on it because it's fairly cold out as they work through the process. More and more and more layers built up. This night, they even worked into the night, trying to stay on schedule, which they did. Day 8, now we started grinding. They're grinding around the end to fit the bulb, which is going to slide over the front with a corresponding groove cut into it. There it is. This is actually just the shell they created in their shop before coming out. Then they began the process of thickening this bulb that goes on the front. It was lots and lots of layers of fiberglass work on the inside. And then after it was installed, you'll see lots of fiberglassing on the outside. Of course, every few layers, it had to sit up and dry till that was completed, and then more and more layers. By the time this was done, the front is about 3.5 inches thick of solid fiberglass. There they go. It's the same stuff, just more and more layers and working on that bulb that's going to go over the front. On day 9, the work continued, and the bulb finally got to go on the boat. It was kind of cool to see it happen. Then they began the process of fiberglassing around where the two pieces slid over each other. Both Steve and Joby worked hard throughout the entire process. As they continued on day 10 of the process, there was simply more grinding and fiberglassing, taking care of more and more details. We got to day 11. We're getting close. Now we're adding more and more fiberglass layers to the front of the bulb, making it all nice and smooth and even and thicker until they got the desired result. Day 12, a little bit more fiberglass, more cleaning, working on the transition from the bow to the top of the bulb. And then a little bit of hurry up and waiting for it to set up and dry. It was all part of the process as they continued daily working on the finishing of our bulbous bow. Finally, it gets a grinding now, once again working to make it all nice and smooth, working into the night once again to stay on schedule. On day 13 is the final day, getting so close. Final little touch-ups, clean-ups here, a little more touch-up on that transition from the boat to the top of the bulb. Then lots of cleaning. Finally, a barrier coat goes on. You can really see it now. If you just caught that real quick, Steve drilled a hole in the top and bottom of the bulbous bow so it floods with water. Then 2 coats of bottom paint go on. Then we have to take family photos apparently with our new bulbous bow before it got the bottom paint. There's a close-up of the hole drilled in the top. There's a corresponding one in the bottom. And then, we can't take all this completely seriously. We got to have some fun. So we took 2 vinyl stickers that we had made by the same company that did our logos, the ones you see on the website and on the side of the boat, and put our logo on each front side of the bulbous bow. Now this is vinyl signage stuff. I have no idea whether it's going to stay or not in the water, and obviously it'll have to come off when we're bottom painted, and we'll just redo it then. But what the heck, it looks really cool in the water, and so far it survived. And of course, we created a bow cam. Bulb cam? Bow cam? I don't know. A GoPro mount built into the top. How long do you think that'll last before it gets wiped off the front of the boat? We'll see. While the boat was out of the water, I took the opportunity to add some line cutters. We don't have room for traditional line cutters, but I found these collar zincs that go on the shaft that have line cutters built into them. So we're giving it a try. At 10 times normal speed, Sea Venture is now ready finally to head back to the water. So off we go. Nice to see her going back where she belongs. Remember our new bulb cam? That's what we'll call it, bulb cam. I started the camera before the boat launched. Remember, I can't reach this camera without being in the tender to turn it on, turn it off, or retrieve it. But I started it on shore, so right at the beginning we'd have bulb cam view of our launch. We then headed out to do our initial sea trials. Not much of a view from here during the sea trials.
On this initial sea trial, we didn't film. We were kind of busy with what we were trying to do and figure out. But one thing we both felt right away as we throttled up Sea Venture from an idle to about 7 knots was that, as was anticipated, the stern did not feel like it squatted. It felt like the bow even came down a little and the boat stayed more level. But we knew we're going to have to measure this in a more precise manner, but that would be for another day. In the meantime, our bulb cam was underwater while we were cruising, but as soon as we stopped in the water to rotate into our slip as we were coming back into the marina, it came out of the water. So here's a sped up version of bulb cam docking.
Now, of course, I had to launch the tender and try to retrieve the camera. A picture of the bulb straight on in the slip.
And now that we were back in the water, it was time for some more sea trials and see if we could get some specific measurements about exactly what the bulbous bow might be doing and how Sea Venture was performing. But before that, we did one additional thing, and that is we filled Sea Venture with fuel. We haven't purchased fuel in quite a while, and the stern tanks were only partially full. And I wanted the stern to be as heavy as possible during the sea trial, so we filled her up. This added 1.5 tons, or about 3,100 pounds of weight, to our stern from the time that we initially went back in the water. So let's take a look at these sea trials and see what you think. The first sea trial was to see what Sea Venture actually did when we went from an idle to throttled up to 7 or 7.5 knots. Did her stern squat as she had traditionally done, and I think almost all power boats tend to do? Did her trim in fact stay level? Did the bow go down, even with all that added fuel in the stern? I think it was really interesting to see how to do this. Now, we had to take some steps to measure it so it's not so anecdotal and just imaginary, maybe what the boat is actually doing. So we have an inclinoscope on board that measures the exact pitch, roll, and yaw of the boat as it's moving. So let's take a look at how this came out.
Let's start by quickly getting familiar with the inclinoscope. The top number is the yaw. This is a movement left and right. Then there's the pitch. This is the up and down movement in degrees. And the roll, that's left and right, also in degrees. A minus number is a roll to port, a positive number, a roll to starboard. For our first test, we're sitting at idle. We're going to slowly throttle up to 7 knots. What we want to watch for is, does the pitch change, which would indicate the bow has gone up on average as we've throttled up, indicating the stern is squatting. As we begin to throttle up here, what you'll see is that it does not change. The boat's trim remains basically unchanged from idle to 7 knots. This is definitely a change from historically what Sea Venture has done. As I indicated before, like most power boats, as you throttle up, the stern squats a little. So I'm going to say this first test is a big success. For our second test here, we have a little bit of chop, an occasional white cap. We can see very little pitching, around 1 degree. Rolling a little bit, paravanes are not out, poles are not extended.
No fish in the water.
Yeah, no paravanes, no poles out. Okay, YouTube family, out here for you guys, working on our Bulbous Bow testing to see how it's all going, because no intelligent boater would be out here. Because no intelligent boater would be out here right now. Let's show you what we got from the front here. Alright, we are actually listing 5 degrees to starboard due to the wind.
25 knots.
Paravanes are in the water. Wind is 25 knots sustained. Forecast, that's the forecast, 25 knots gusting to 40. Here with the camera you can start to get an idea. Almost no pitching.
glad the fish are in the water. Definitely need them. Look at those big seas. Oh, I didn't latch the side gate. Oh well.
Ease up.
Let's go right by the tip of elephant nose. Is that what it's called? By the tip of the nose. Get ourselves back in there. Well, lesson learned.
Is there more spray now as a result? I think it's that second wave
Could be.
that's making the spray. Okay, Rose, how we doing?
We're hanging in there. I'm
Let's look at that wind. 30 to 32 knots sustained.
33. Yeah.
The view out the window through the spray-covered pilot house windows.
Wow.
Not dropping
35.
not dropping below 30 knots. There's 35 sustained. But look at, if you can see in the camera, the amount of pitching and rolling of the boat. Pretty cool. Dang, when it warms up, there's going to be a lot of washing on the outside of the boat to do.
All right, we're heading back into the marina at 10 times actual speed here. This is the Wrangell Heritage Harbor Marina. It's been an absolutely great home base for the winter. I think Wrangell really does turn out to be kind of in the banana belt in the winter time. As I indicated, this is 10 times normal speed, but I get lots of questions about docking. So as we approach the slip here, we're going to go ahead and do it in real time. And you'll just see, according to Rosie, how painfully slow I usually go. Not all the time, depends on conditions, but usually pretty slow.
Yeah. All right, we're at that point in the video you've all been waiting for. Let's go over the cost of all this. But we got to make it a little bit of fun, right? So before I go over the cost, if you've watched both videos, you don't have to tell anybody. I just want you to pick a number in your head. What do you think this cost? And let's see how you do. If you want, you can let me know in the comments below what you guessed. But let's go through it part by part. All right? Total labor, $10,021. That includes all the putting it together, cleaning, design work, all that stuff. All labor. The tube itself, custom made for us in Bellingham and then shipped up here, $4,059. All the other materials, mostly fiberglassing materials, $4,172. And the port fees, $1,327. That's the haul out, repositioning, fees for sitting in the yard, and then relaunching in the water. Grand total, tax included, $19,549. So that's the total, just under $20,000 all in for all the details, everything for Sea Ventures' new Bulbous Bow. Okay, well, there you have it. This is kind of, we're going to ramble here for a little bit, but not ramble too much because we have a lot of ground still to cover. But I think if you've watched both part 1 and part 2 to this point, you know about as much about bulbous bows on trawler yachts as we do. What do you think?
Remember, our goal was to reduce pitching. And while many people talk about, yes, the up and down movement on the bow of the boat, while many people talk about bulbous bows and fuel efficiency, that really wasn't what we were going for. We were pretty satisfied with where Sea Venture is right now. It was the pitching that was making some travel pretty darn uncomfortable, and so we wanted to address that issue. And as you can see from the side-by-side views from the before and the after, it really did do the job. Yes.
I think so. Plus now we've got like a really big bumper and a new cool spot to put the Sea Venture logo. That would have been worth it itself, right? Maybe not.
Well, maybe
Okay,
not.
well, pitching?
So what are some of the downsides of bulbous bows? We've heard about the sound. It makes a slapping noise when you're underway. And we did experience some of that, or we heard that sound. We didn't describe it as much as a slapping, as much as a thump on the bow. Similar to when you kind of get a sideways wave on the side of the hull. But we did get more of that.
Yeah. Yeah, and we tried to capture this on video for you, and I didn't put it in the video, but we have video of the boat cruising along, and then us looking at each other, and you can hear us saying, "There, did you hear that? Did you hear that?"
Yes, yes.
And then a little while, and then we say it again, and then when you go back and play the video, you hear nothing.
No.
You can hear nothing. But you know, if you own a boat, you've heard this exact sound. When the wave gets the right timing and a wave kind of slaps the side of the boat, that's the sound we've heard that we think is associated with the bulb.
And it's not constant. It's like every 8th wave, that kind of a
Something
cycle.
like that. Yeah.
But we did find that if we shifted course a little bit, we could make that go away.
Yeah.
So
Now remember, this is not the sound of the bulb coming out of the water.
we weren't in that rough of seas.
No. I'll talk about that in a sec. The idea of the bulb coming out of the water. But remember, in part 1 we talked about the bulb makes a second wave that, if timed correctly, can deal with fuel efficiency like on large ships. Again, not where we were going with Sea Venture. But I think it's this second wave being created, hitting back on the boat right in front of the pilot house windows, it seemed like, that made that thump. Now, one of the challenges in trying to figure out whether that's related to the bulbous bow or not is that we're doing our sea trial in seas that we would normally not be cruising in.
Exactly.
And we've all heard that thump before, but I think we heard it a little bit more.
Frequently, yeah.
Let me just talk real briefly about the idea of this bulb coming out of the water. This takes significant seas to do it. Unlike rolling, pitching is actually a pretty small amount of the bow moving up and down. 4 degrees of pitch is actually pretty significant in a trawler yacht. That amount. And I think Richard has a 42 kV Krogan who crossed the Atlantic, the North Atlantic, and then from the Canaries back to the Caribbean, and then from the Caribbean to Alaska. And I think he reports about 4 degrees is the maximum pitch he ever encountered. If you go through all the math on a boat like Sea Venture, a 4-degree pitch, I got to look at my notes, the bow is rising and dropping 3.28 feet. That's enough to pick you up off your feet. The floor drops out from underneath you almost 2.25 feet. That would be really uncomfortable. Note the exact same amount of pitching in a 400-foot ship. The bow is moving up and down 26 feet. So this is why on big ships you can see the bulbous bow come out. As boats get smaller, harder and harder to get that out of the water. The bottom of the bulb is about 4 feet under the water. So anyway, I think that's all food for thought. We're going to need to do a lot more cruising to get a good sense of this slapping sound and how much of a course change is required to eliminate it and how much is related to the bulb versus other stuff. Yeah, but we'll work on that.
Another thing we experienced is that we think the boat may be a bit of a wetter ride as a result of the bulb. Jim talked about that second wave coming back, and I think it comes up, and then we're seeing more of that on the pilot house windows as a result.
The spray coming up and hitting the glass.
Hard to tell, though, exactly how much of an impact that will have. In some of the video, you saw a lot of the spray on the glass. Remember, we were in below freezing temperatures, and so
Right at freezing, I think, or just
Right.
above at the moment. But
so the water was coming up and hitting the windshield, and then kind of freezing on the
it was
windshield.
it was freezing.
So I'm
The
not
glass
sure how
was,
much of that would have stayed. Anyway,
No.
we'll get more of a picture of that as time goes on. But I do definitely think we're going to have a bit of a wetter ride than we used to have before. It used to be really dry.
yeah. Well, we sometimes got spray
Yeah, not too frequently.
during our sea trials. A bunch of times we got
Yeah,
spray
yeah.
up over the bow and onto the pilot house.
Right.
Again, we'll have to figure out how much of that's related because we're boating in weather you wouldn't
We
normally
should
boat
be
in,
yeah.
or it just does that. It may do that because it holds the bow down and doesn't ride up as over the bow, the wave as much.
Yeah.
We'll see. Something else we're gonna have to work on defining better and report back later.
Exactly.
All right. So remembering, our goal is to reduce pitching. Nothing to do really with fuel efficiency. If Sea Venture became more fuel efficient, we would consider that a bonus.
Yeah.
Exactly. But we still are going to try to answer the question, did Sea Venture become more efficient? And the reality is, to know for certain, we're going to need at least a couple thousand miles of travel time to measure exactly our average speed over a lot of different conditions. Now, we're blessed a little bit by the fact that we do have 10,000 running hours, about 50,000 nautical miles of travel records showing the exact average speed and fuel burn on Sea Venture. So, with some time behind us, we're going to be able to answer this question precisely.
Right.
Now, having said that, we have a preliminary answer to the question, did Sea Venture become more efficient or move through the water faster at the same RPM? And the answer looks like is yes.
Yeah.
We did some initial sea trials. We didn't bother to film it because frankly it would be a bit boring. But we, in calm water, went down a set straight course for a specific period of time, 2 miles, did a U-turn, 2 miles back, averaged it to get the average speed to counteract any current or wind. Did that. And it looks like the average speed is about half a knot faster than we have normally encountered. Again, that's all very preliminary.
Yeah. And we think that might be related to trim.
I think it's, that's the other question. What's it related to? I think that can almost be controversial or have a difference of opinion amongst experts that all agree smaller boats can be faster. Is it related to getting the second wave right? I'd probably not.
No, I don't think so.
Improved trim. You saw that Sea Venture did not squat at all. Is it more weight in the bow?
And they're
And therefore helping with trim?
and also, or is it just the
reduced
increased
pitching.
waterline length?
Yeah, the increased waterline length.
Yep.
Is it the reduced pitching? One thing we didn't talk too much in the video about, or I don't think I ever even mentioned, is that pitching causes this deceleration, right? 7.5 knots, 6 knots when you hit a wave. Up, 7.5 knots, 6 knots. That
Yeah.
deceleration. And if you're reduced pitching, you reduce that deceleration, and you may pick up speed from that. There's a lot of potential options about how it might happen. And I think one of the cool things about Bulbous Bows is there remains a little bit of mystery, I think, on that topic.
Yeah.
But first initial, very small preliminary
Testing.
test
yeah.
result would indicate that we have, in fact, picked up a little speed.
But once we get a few more thousand
Yeah.
miles under our hull, we'll revisit this topic and update you all.
We'll
Yeah.
update the blog.
Put
Otherwise,
a blog on the website and update it.
ask
So,
us when we're in the Sea of Cortez next winter in
absolutely,
Mexico.
Yes.
We'll know by
do it
then.
Again. Yep. Yep. So the next question is: should you consider a bulbous bow? Well, we don't know.
I don't know.
We don't know. But like everything, you got to sort out, what's the cost benefit for you, along with what are your cruising grounds, what are your intended uses for your boat, what kind of boat do you have, all of that. I wouldn't take lightly making a change to a hull design.
No, that's a serious, that
serious.
That's serious. That's
consideration,
serious
yeah.
business, and you have to manage your own risk tolerance, right? For it. But when we look back, I suppose we look at all the improvements and upgrades we've done to Sea Venture, and some you've seen on YouTube, some actually you haven't. But we, added the superstructure and the paravanes.
Yes, huge win.
Yep,
But
huge win.
expensive. Yeah.
But yeah, we strengthened the salon and the house structure as part of that same process. We did significant electrical upgrades. We even added the new swim platform earlier in 2020, and we've done more. And I tell you, all of those projects cost more than the Bulbous Bow.
Yep.
So for us, a total cost of just under $20,000. It's the least expensive of these upgrades we've done, and so for us the cost benefit was worth it. The potential benefit was worth it.
In addition, every boat owner with a bulbous bow that we spoke with had theirs done by Steve Keller here in Wrangell, and every one of them reported reduced pitching and improved fuel economy.
Yep. So what's the downside? That you potentially spend $20,000 and it be a waste of money, and if it's so bad you have to spend $4,000 or $5,000 more cutting it off. If you own a boat in Sea Venture size and you haven't, I don't want to say the word wasted, you haven't spent $25,000 that in hindsight maybe you shouldn't have. You just haven't owned your boat long enough yet. You'll get there. You'll get there, but you just need some more time behind you for that.
Well, that's a lot of money.
All right, now, we certainly have been told and have heard from plenty of people who said, I want to look at my notes to make sure I get it right, bulbous bows don't work on boats your size. Your boat will go slower as a result of having a bulbous bow. It doesn't make any sense. Someone's stealing your money from you. It's a big waste of money. I get that. We've heard all those opinions, which I'm fine with and I respect. But as far as I know, I have not heard that opinion, any of those points, from a single person that owns a trawler yacht with a bulbous bow. And so that's important to me. I mean,
Because the people we talked to
that own boats with bulbous bows
were
love them.
most appreciative of them.
Yeah. And so that carries a lot of weight with us.
And we want to give special thanks to Steve Keller of Keller Marine Repair and to Joe Montoy.
So they not only worked hard on our project for us on Sea Venture, but in the end they became friends, which frankly is really easy here to do in Wrangell where everybody is so darn nice. But we could not personally recommend them and their work more. They've just been great. They both work on boats independently, and then they team up on larger projects like Sea Venture's Bulbous Bow when that makes sense to do so. They've both been in business here in Wrangell for decades, doing all different types of work on boats.
While working on our bulbous bow, we snuck in a little extra work, of course, at the
of course,
yard, because that's
Job-
what we do.
Job creep is our definition. That's us.
That is
That's-
indeed.
yes.
But really, it was kind of important. We had still teak decks remaining on one side of our house and in the cockpit. And it rained here in Wrangell a lot. And that was something we wanted to get rid of because they leaked. And so while in between fiberglassing the bulbous bow, Job also got to work on our teak decks and eliminated them and fiberglassed it all over and waterproofed it
We
all.
fiberglassed those decks.
Now we are 100% done with teak decks.
Woo! After off and on 4 years of
Yeah.
work,
Well, you can
100%
tell-
of the teak decks of Sea Venture are gone.
That's how much we didn't like that job, and we kept putting it off. So now Joby helped us get it done.
Thank
so that was great.
you,
Yes.
Joby. But do you think we're done with Steve and Joby yet? No. We've got one more project in the middle of right now that they're working on, and that's totally different. That's replacement of our pilot house doors. So Sea Venture's pilot house doors are the original teak doors. You have to constantly fuddle with them to get them to latch. One of them has a little bit of warp in the bottom of the teak, so you can
That's
actually
an
see some.
understatement.
You can see some daylight under the door when it's closed, so they're not airtight.
Very noticeable in the rain,
Yeah,
water,
yeah.
and in the cold air.
Yeah. So it was time for them to go. So they're coming out and they're being replaced with custom-made anodized aluminum airtight and watertight doors that are Dutch doors that we can open just the top half of.
That'll be
yeah.
cool.
Yeah, we're excited to make the old teak doors go away. Beautiful new doors installed, and the Dutch door component I think we will really enjoy too while cruising.
Yep.
When it's warm enough to open the door, which isn't yet in Wrangell.
No, not yet.
All right, if you've made it this far, congratulations, because you get to learn about a couple new fun things we have in the works for Sea Venture and for our YouTube family.
First, we acquired a new Mavic Mini 2, a DJI Mavic Mini 2, a new little drone. That's mine.
Yes, Rosie said I'm not allowed
get
to
that
touch
one.
the new drone. So now we'll have two drones, mine, and Rosie will have hers.
And we're really excited about some additional drone footage we can get out to you.
Yes.
Because this place is gorgeous, and you just need to see it.
Right. The second item I'm really excited about is just mine, ours
see.
to
We'll
play
see.
with. It's an underwater ROV. Think of it as an underwater drone with a 4K camera, big lights on it, virtual reality goggles to drive it by. It can dive to a depth of 300 feet and remain underwater for 3 hours at one time. So we're really excited about.
We don't have it yet. It's coming.
It's on the way to
Yes.
us. So we're really excited about it and playing around with it in the marina and in anchorages and seeing if every time this thing disappears underwater, we can somehow find a way to get it to come back to us.
Exactly.
We will see.
We hope so.
So we'll get to
Yes.
play with a new little submarine aboard Sea Venture.
Woohoo! Thank you all so much for the opportunity to pay it forward and share our experiences with you.
We've learned so much from our YouTube family. It's just been great, and we've really appreciated and enjoyed the chance to meet so many great people with a shared passion. So remember, whatever your passion is, just make a plan, detail it out, execute it, just do it.
So until next time.
Wishing you no wind and flat seas. Bye, everybody.
everyone.